Welcome back to Tabletop Shampoo. I am your host, Primate Pimpin', and I am here solo today, here to give you something that will be basically a companion to another video we did, and it's something that we're going to be doing basically for the foreseeable futures after we do our build videos. I noticed in the comments that a lot of people wanted some spells to be attached to that blaster build that we put out, so I said, why don't I just do a blaster's cookbook? This video is going to list some of my favorite spells to use at all levels, starting with core and going through all of the books that contain new spells that should be talked about. As such, I will be going fairly quickly through some of these spells. Keep in mind that this isn't an end-all be-all. Once again, this is simply our opinion, and you can take whatever you want on your casters, but I think if we were looking at a theme or thematic sort of thing here, there's a certain way I like to go. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell to be notified of all of our videos that we will be releasing. And here's the drop. Alright, before we get started on these spells, a brief aside on classes. So, for a blaster to be blasting, we need to be focusing on one of two traditions. It's either going to be arcane or primal, so we need to pick a class that's going to be using one of those traditions. All of the great blaster spells are going to be kind of centered in those schools. If we want a traditional, I have this energy and you're getting blasted and blown up, we need to be going primal or arcane. And honestly, I think you should be going primal. And that is the main reason why I decided to go with Sorcerer with that build video. There are new options such as the Elementalist, where you can get even more laser focused on the primal list. And of course, everybody's favorite, the Magus. First, let's talk about cantrips. We will be starting with the core rulebook. The first cantrip needs no introduction. It is the amazing Electric Arc. People consider this to be the best attack cantrip in the game. 30 feet, you hit two people, they make a save. We're doing D4s that scale at a 1/1 heightened level. 1d4s. D4s isn't a ton of damage on the rolls, but it is consistent damage, and we're hitting multiple targets with a free spell. After that, if I were to go with a single target option, my favorite is Ray of Frost. Very good range, 120 feet. You make an icy ray, blast a dude. They take 1d4 plus your spellcasting modifier. If you critically succeed, they get a -10 to their speeds. Excellent for a free spell. Definitely can't forget to mention Telekinetic Projectile. It is not on the primal list, but it is an excellent attack spell if you are a wizard or anyone using the arcane spell tradition. Level 1. First, let's talk about True Strike. Look, we did a whole bunch of shucking and jiving just to get this spell on our primal caster. Hey, and the reason is very simple. We want to be more accurate, and if we're using single target roll against AC kind of spells, we want to be able to hit. So roll 2 dice, take the best one, keep it moving. Speaking of single target spells that roll against AC, also at level 1 we have Hydraulic Push, 60 feet, 3d6 bludgeoning damage. If that wasn't enough, we are moving people away 5 or 10 feet if we critically succeed, and of course if we critically succeed it is 66. Excellent spell. Level 2 core rulebook. Here's another one, Acid Arrow, 120 feet. You were getting hit with 3d8 acid damage and 1d6 persistent acid damage, and then of course on a critical hit we double that, but we don't double the persistent damage. But the fact that we are attacking people with persistent damage on a hit is excellent enough. The scaling isn't as good, but the scaling is still quite good when you consider that the persistent damage will also scale. Definitely a solid addition for your arsenal. Level 3 is of course Stacked. First, a spell that isn't a blasting spell, but please take haste. Look, this spell has been nerfed into the ground, and guess what? It still doesn't matter. It's still a staple for all casters. If you want to get extra actions out of your caster, because you know, we all know we need extra actions, please take haste. Look, we got Searing Light coming up next, 120 feet. This bad boy is 5d6 good damage. So, alright, if you're hitting fiends, already good. But also, if we're not hitting fiends, we can still lean hard on the 5d6 fire damage. It's both if it's like a fiend or an undead creature. So this single target spell is no joke when we're talking about hitting evil bastards. 120 feet, excellent range. If you're fighting against like nefarious creatures, this is the go-to single target spell that we're looking for. Last but not least is Fireball, 500 feet, 20-foot burst, blow everybody up, 66 fire damage. I don't need to say nothing else. Level 4 spells, Hydraulic Torrent, 60-foot line, 8d6 bludgeoning damage. We are pushing people back just like we did with Hydraulic Push. A quick aside on line spells, they are excellent. I don't know if you've seen the diagram on possible lines, but in this edition, we can kind of curve lines. Not really curve them, but we can bend the lines so that we can hit multiple targets more easily. The fact that lines are more flexible in the system is excellent. I would suggest that on your spell list, you take both line and AoE spells if you're trying to blast. At level 5, we got the ridiculous Cone of Cold, 60-foot cone, 12d6 cold damage. Yeah, that's sick. It's probably going to be your go-to cone for a good while, and it's once again a good addition. So we now have lines, cones, and AoE spells. We're coming up on one of my favorite spells in the book, level 6, Chain Lightning. 500 feet, we target one creature, but it's going to hit additional creatures as it chains. 8d12 electricity damage. Then they make a reflex save, it arcs to another guy for another 8d12 electricity damage. And this keeps happening until someone critically succeeds their save or there's no more targets within 30 feet for it to arc to. This spell is great. I hope that everybody gets to play the campaign where they get to a high enough spell levels that they can cast this thing, because I love this spell. It's time for the Big Bang Theory, level 7, Eclipse Burst. 500 feet, people are taking 8d10 cold damage, but if that wasn't enough, an additional 8d4 negative damage to living creatures. Did I mention this is in a 60-foot burst, which is huge enormous? Also, if you critically fail, you're blinded. Yeah, at level 8, we got probably the strongest ray in the game, Polar Ray, 120 feet, 10d8, and Drain 2, double damage on crit success. It doesn't double the drain value, but that's a lot of damage. Got another one for you, Horrid Wilting. This isn't actually on theme, I don't think, but it definitely fits. Honestly, it is on theme. We're blasting and killing people. 500 feet, you get to target any number of living creatures, and they all take 10d10 negative damage. Basic reflex, no, sorry, basic fortitude. If they are plants or they're water elementals or contain significant moisture, their degree of success is one lower. This spell is crazy good. Level 9, we got Meteor Swarm, 500 feet once again, 4 40-foot bursts. They're gonna do 6d10 bludgeoning damage to the center, and then an additional 14d6 fire damage to the whole of the AoE. And this is, of course, 4 of them. Yeah, don't really be in the center of these, it's gonna hurt a lot. Get rained on. We also got Storm of Vengeance. This one is a whopping 800 feet, 360-foot burst, sustain up to 1 minute. We're doing consistent damage modes on this one, from Acid Rain to Thunderclap. 4d8 acid damage, or 4d10 bludgeoning damage, or 10 bolts of lightning that each do 76 electricity damage. We are a walking natural disaster. And if that wasn't enough death and destruction, at level 10 we take Cataclysm. It's 1,000 feet, 60-foot burst. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 modes on this thing. They all do damage. Everybody in the burst saves for all of it. We're looking at 21d10 damage. I mean, it is a level 10 spell, so hopping over to Advanced Player's Guide, we're going to start it off with a level 3 spell, Crashing Wave, 30-foot cone, 66 bludgeoning damage. Excellent cone attack that we get fairly early for our diversification of blasting types. Normal basic situation where we're saving for reflex. Damage increases by 2d6 per height and level. Great scaling. Look, I got a double feature for you at level 5. First is Blister. So 60 feet, we target a guy, and then they make a fort save in which we can pop a blister off of them and do small 15-foot cones originating from the person we targeted. Successes get you 1 or more blisters. This spell is pretty cool. I mean, it gives you odd targeting vectors on small cones that can hit multiple targets, and this includes the person that you targeted with the blister. The only problem is that this is going to complete with Cone of Cold, and really it's not really competing. It's just another spell where you could get interesting angles. Also, since it's a fort save, we have a diversification of saves as well. This is a really cool spell. I've used it. It's pretty awesome. If you wanted to get some more earth bending, you can take Impaling Spike, also at level 5. 30 feet, basically a spike comes from under and essentially impales the person that it was underneath. If they fail this save, they are gonna be rooted in place. They can do an escape attempt. Damage is pretty decent, does 8d6 piercing damage and scales by 2d6 per height level. If you critically fail, you hit a vital organ and they are flat-footed as long as they're impaled. So that's a pretty cool feature. People usually don't critically fail, but a failure does kind of root them in place and have to spend an action doing an escape attempt and all of that, as well as taking damage. Pretty cool, and it's on theme. So moving right over to Secrets of Magic. We're gonna start with cantrips. Scatter Scree. So this spell at first glance doesn't look like much at all. Same kind of damage dice d4s as a lot of cantrips. However, this cantrip actually creates rough terrain as well. 30 feet creates rough terrain, and you scale the d4s as normal, heighten 1 for a d4 each, giving the enemy some movement reduction, as well as doing damage with your free spell. Is pretty awesome. We also have Gouging Claw. So this spell's damage is great for a cantrip. D6s. Also, when you critically succeed, you hit them with a persistent bleed damage that is D4. The only problem is the range on this is touch. So you're gonna look at me crazy, like, why the hell would you want to be in melee range as a caster? And the answer is, this isn't for traditional casters or ones that focus on using the cast a spell action. This is for my blaster mages that are magi. So if you're a magus, this is going to be your go-to cantrip when using cantrips for your spell strike. D6s plus potential persistent bleed damage is ridiculously good for a cantrip. This basically is on par with a telekinetic projectile, but Gouging Claw is better than telekinetic projectile in my opinion for the spell strike. At level 2, you already knew I was going to talk about it. Scorching Ray. This is a modular spell, 1 to 3 actions, 60 feet. You fire a ray. It's going to do 2d6. For each additional action, you can target an additional person. And then, if you use it with 2 or more actions when casting the spell, the damage increases to 4d6 per target. This is an amazing level 2 spell. Look, the damage on this level 2 spell is great. It does focus on your strengths. You get to attack multiple people with your Scorching Rays, doing decent damage to all of them. If you need the extra actions, you can just hit one person for 2d6. If that wasn't enough, the scaling on this is excellent. 1-for-1 ratio, heighten 1, 2d6 per heighten. And we're gonna skip right to 5 yet again. Perhaps one of the coolest spells I've ever seen in this system. Flammable Fumes, 20-foot bursts, 120 feet away. Now, this is gonna initially cause the people in it to take 2d6 poison damage, and then these fumes are flammable. They can't see anything because it's just gas, right? And then after that round, if that area comes into contact with an open flame or any flammable object, everybody there is going to take 10d6. So essentially, if you hit somebody with, I don't know, a Scorching Ray or a Fireball, they're going to have to suffer that damage and then suffer an additional 10d6 fire damage because of the fumes exploded. Lastly, I'm going to go to level 6 and give you 2 sustainable spells of destruction. One of my favorites, Elemental Confluence. First of all, the visual on this thing is excellent. You conjure 4 types of elementals that are basically doing a storm in the air, just kind of like roiling around in the air. You get 4 modes on this spell: air, earth, fire, and water, and each of them do different things. Every time you sustain this thing, you get to choose 2 of the 4. Earth, if you choose that, The Confluence gains +2 bonus to AC and resistance 10 to all physical damage except adamantine. The thing is, people can target this Confluence. If people waste attacks on this thing, excellent, you're not hitting my party. But we're doing things like a water attack, 4d6 bludgeoning damage, and +2 circumstance bonus on the spell attack roll against a target inside the Confluence. So if they're trying to roll up, they're easier to hit and damage. Fire is even more damage, dealing 1d6 persistent fire damage to those partially or inside the Confluence. Air, 4d4 electricity damage to people within 20 feet of the Confluence. Basic reflex save. Basically, it's free damage every turn, but it isn't as much damage as the next one I'm about to go over, which is Flame Vortex. Also the same level. You conjure a flame tornado, and you get to move it in a straight line every turn, and whoever it crosses, they make a reflex save for 3d6 fire damage and 3d4 bludgeoning damage. Save for half. Once again, free damage for one action on potentially multiple enemies. Just really good spells in general that are also on theme. That about wraps it up. Those are going to be the spells that I'm talking about in this video that fit the theme of Blaster Mage. Of course, there are more options you can definitely take, and also these were just like damage dealing spells. There are definitely spells I put on my spell list that are utility. I like having some heals in some spell slots just in case an emergency happens, things of that nature. So yeah, I was trying to stay on theme to keep the video short. What I'm gonna do in the next phase of this is I will talk about gearing options for that specific kind of blaster build. That will wrap up the cookbook series for that build. That's gonna be it. I'm signing off. Definitely get with us. If you have any questions or comments, put them in the comments. If you hate everything that I told you, put it in the comments, and we'll catch you next time. And also, don't forget to spend all of your hero points. Peace.